It started with her coming home from yoga class with her sports bra on backwards. At first glance, it looked like a simple wardrobe mishap. She laughed it off, said she'd been in a rush leaving the locker room, that she was starving and needed to get dinner started. But I knew my wife. The woman who used to triple-check her eyeliner in the microwave reflection before taking out the trash? She didn't put anything on backwards, not even her moral compass, until now. The thing is, when you've built a routine with someone for over a decade, you notice the small tears in the fabric long before it completely rips apart. I remember how the kids were already upstairs, and she kept glancing at the hallway like someone else was supposed to walk in behind her. There was a bead of sweat trickling down her temple, but not the kind you earn in downward dog. More like the kind you get when you're praying your lie is tight enough to hold. That same night, I found her gym bag in the laundry room and noticed two things. Her towel was dry and her water bottle was full. She never left the gym without soaking through both. So where the hell had she been? The doubt started as a whisper, like a flickering pilot light behind my ribs, but it grew loud fast. I didn't accuse. I didn't even blink. I kissed her goodnight, tucked the kids in, and started my real workout, uncovering the truth. The next day, I volunteered to do the school drop-off, something she usually insisted on. The kids chattered in the back seat while I scrolled through the car's sync Bluetooth history at a red light. Her phone had connected at 9:27 a.m. yesterday, when she was supposed to be at work. Curious. Then I noticed an address saved under favorites on the GPS, just initials, RB, but it wasn't a school, gym, or coffee shop. I looked it up. It was a townhouse in the middle of a condo complex near the edge of town. I didn't drive there. Not yet. I needed more. That evening, while she was in the shower, I installed a tracking app on the family tablet, which synced with her phone. It took less than 2 minutes. She thought I was downstairs folding laundry. I was, in fact, folding my patience. For the next week, I tracked every step she took, every mile she drove. And wouldn't you know it? Yoga class was taking place at RB's townhouse 3 times a week. The kids were being told Mom was staying late at work to prep for budget meetings. Meanwhile, she was perfecting downward dog with someone whose name she wouldn't even say out loud. I kept quiet. I kissed her on the cheek every night, cooked dinner, made school lunches, read bedtime stories, and acted like I didn't know my life had turned into a waiting room before the explosion. What kind of man smiles while eating dinner with a traitor across the table? The kind who's already sharpening the knife. The breaking point came one Friday when she slipped up. I was in the kitchen with our daughter when she came home wearing a necklace I'd never seen before, rose gold, delicate, not her usual taste. It was on sale, she said before I even asked. Funny. I hadn't said a word. That's when I knew she was so buried in her own lies that she'd started hallucinating questions. She was unraveling. But I wasn't. I just looked at our daughter, who was watching her mother lie and didn't even know it yet. That's when I made the decision. Not just to leave. Not just to punish. But to replace. I was going to give our kids a woman worthy of the word mom. Not someone who came home with another man's sweat on her skin and her bra on backwards. Not someone who looked her husband in the eye with a smile rehearsed in a mirror next to a used condom wrapper. I wasn't going to shout or beg. I wasn't going to give her the dignity of a confrontation. I was going to let her fall off the pedestal she thought she owned, and then show her that someone better, stronger, and purer had stepped up to take her place. Not for me. For our children. And eventually, for the world to see. Because nothing haunts a narcissist more than knowing the people they discarded have found something better than they ever offered. And oh, she'd see it. She'd see it real damn soon. We used to wake up with her head on my chest and her legs tangled around mine like vines clinging to something solid. Mornings were slow, warm, filled with inside jokes and coffee shared in silence, the good kind, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. I believed in that rhythm, the simple rituals that told me we were okay. I believed in her, maybe even more than she believed in herself. So when she started getting up earlier, before I was even out of bed, I didn't question it. I told myself she was just getting more disciplined, maybe finally taking that online fitness challenge she'd always talked about. She said she was journaling. Morning pages, she called it. Something about clearing her head, reconnecting with herself. I told her that sounded beautiful. I didn't realize, then, that clearing her head meant clearing me out of it. She stopped letting me see what she was writing. She'd close the notebook too quickly or turn it face down on the table like a dealer folding a losing hand. But she still kissed me goodbye, still texted me heart emojis in the middle of the day. I clung to those scraps like they were proof we were still us. Then the yoga classes started. At first, she came back flushed, tired, the way you do after a real workout. But then something shifted. She started glowing, literally glowing, with this kind of radiance I hadn't seen since before the kids were born. Only, it wasn't a glow that reached me. It was like she was beaming for someone else. She talked more about boundaries, said she was working on not losing herself and other people's needs. I told her I understood. I supported it. I even bought her a subscription to that meditation app she mentioned once in passing. But the more I gave, the more she pulled away. She started staying later at work. Said there was a new manager who was really inspiring and had her rethinking her professional goals. I asked what that meant for us, for our time, and she gave me that smile, polite as hell, like I was the HR department asking an uncomfortable question. One night, she came home with a new haircut, short and sleek, totally different from the soft wave she always said I loved. "Do you like it?" she asked, already turning away before I could answer. It wasn't a real question. It was a test she didn't care if I passed. I told her she looked beautiful. She nodded. No kiss, no thank you. Just nodded. Like a stranger. We stopped watching shows together. She'd sit on the couch with her laptop, earbuds in, laughing quietly to something I couldn't hear. She said it was a new podcast about female empowerment. I believed her, because I wanted to. Until I walked past her one night and caught a glimpse of her screen. Not a podcast. It was a private Instagram live. I saw hearts floating, comments scrolling. I saw her smile, not the dead one she gave me, but the real one, the one with teeth and sparkle, and it was aimed at her phone. I didn't recognize the username pinned to the top, but I remembered the initials, RB. When I asked what she was watching, she minimized the window so fast her laptop nearly slipped off her lap. Just something for work, she said. Then she got up and left the room like I had invaded her privacy. The kind of slow death that happens when you keep hoping it's just a phase. She said she was tired. She said she was stressed. She said she needed to feel like herself again before she could be intimate. I told her I'd wait. That I understood. But she didn't hold my hand when we went to bed anymore. And when I tried to touch her, she'd shift away like I was interrupting something sacred. She started locking her phone. She'd never done that before. Everyone does it now, she said. Privacy is healthy. But privacy wasn't the word for it. Secrecy was. Her phone barely left her side. She even started taking it into the bathroom with her. Once, I heard her whispering behind the door. I knocked and asked if she was okay. She flushed the toilet, ran the sink, then opened the door with a smile so tight it looked stapled on. Just needed space, she said. Everything was about space now. Space for her. Space to grow. Space to figure out what she wanted. I gave it to her. I gave her everything. But it was never enough. I started noticing small things, new lingerie tags in the trash, even though she never wore anything like that for me anymore. She bought a new pair of heels, 2 red, 4 inches high. Said it was just for herself. But women don't buy stilettos for solo journaling sessions. The final blow didn't come in a scream or a fight. It came in silence. One evening I came home from work and found her eating dinner alone, candles lit, soft music playing, wine glass half full. She looked up like I was the one intruding. "Oh," she said. "I thought you were working late." I wasn't. I never was. But she didn't ask where I'd been. She didn't care. That's when I realized I wasn't part of her new world. I was just a shadow in the background of her growth, a relic from the life she was quietly deleting. And still, I didn't confront her. Because even then, some pathetic part of me wanted to believe this was salvageable, that she'd come back. But I was wrong. And I was done being wrong. It was a Thursday evening, one of those evenings where the sky doesn't quite commit to night, just bleeds out slowly in grays. She had told me she was staying late to help her manager prep for a budget presentation, so I made dinner for the kids, cleaned the dishes, and put them to bed. Everything was ordinary until I walked past the laundry basket in our bedroom and noticed her blazer thrown across the top. That's what did it. Not a message or a location ping or even some stranger's cologne. A damn blazer. It was navy, expensive, part of a set I bought her last Christmas. She never wore it without the matching skirt until today. And when I picked it up, something slid from the inside pocket and landed on the floor like a confession. A receipt. Crumpled, like it had been shoved there quickly. Dated today. Timestamped for 6:17 p.m. A cozy little Mediterranean bistro 2 towns over, the kind of place with fairy lights in the windows and live jazz on Thursdays. For 2 people. Not a work group. Not a budget meeting. 2 meals, 1 bottle of mid-range wine, and a dessert listed as shared. My name wasn't on that receipt. There was no mention of a client dinner. No trace of business at all. Just intimacy, casual and careless, like we no longer existed in the same world. I didn't move for a full minute. I just stared at that flimsy slip of paper like it had teeth. My breathing didn't change. My hands didn't shake. I folded the receipt neatly, almost reverently, and placed it back inside her pocket. Let her think she got away with it a little longer. Let her keep playing house while the fuse burned quietly under her feet. When she came home an hour later, cheeks a little too flushed, hair a little too tousled for someone who'd been crunching numbers under fluorescent lights, I didn't greet her. I didn't ask how the meeting went. I just smiled and handed her a glass of water. She looked at me like she couldn't remember what I looked like. She muttered something about being exhausted and went upstairs. I watched her go. That night in bed, she curled up on her side, her back to me. I lay still, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in my life, I felt absolutely nothing. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Nothing. Just cold, surgical clarity. I had been married to a woman who now shared desserts with another man while telling me we were growing apart. Who wore the clothes I bought her to warm another lap. Who looked me in the eye every day and still found the audacity to call this personal growth. I knew, in that exact moment, that I could never go back, not just to trusting her, but to being the man who tolerated being lied to with such shameless ease. The man she clearly thought was too soft, too simple, too dumb to notice. That version of me was gone. Something harder had taken its place. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to cry. She thought silence meant weakness, but she'd forgotten the most dangerous predators are the ones who don't make a sound before they strike. I got out of bed quietly that night and walked downstairs. I didn't know what I was looking for until I opened the kitchen drawer where she kept her old phone, the one she never sold after upgrading. It was still there, powered off, screen slightly cracked at the corner. I turned it on, and it booted up sluggishly, but it opened. No passcode. She never thought to wipe it. That's where I found it. A backup of her old messages, still syncing with the cloud. I didn't scroll far. I didn't need to. Just a single thread with a name I didn't recognize, Robbie Dodd, and a photo icon that told me everything. Him, shirtless, in her bathroom mirror. The timestamp? Last month. While I was upstairs reading our daughter to sleep. The messages weren't even explicit. They were worse. Miss you already, he wrote. Your bed smells like heaven. She replied with a heart emoji. Then, he doesn't suspect a thing. He's just comfortable. Not angry. Not controlling. Just comfortable. Like that was a flaw. Like being steady was a sin. I powered off the phone and placed it exactly where I'd found it. Then I went back upstairs, slid into bed beside her, and listened to her soft breathing, the same woman who had just carved a wound so deep I could see daylight through it. And I didn't touch her. Didn't speak. Didn't even look at her. I just stared into the dark and started doing the math, not on how to save us, but on how to end her. Because now I wasn't just suspicious. I wasn't even hurt. I was activated. She wanted space? She was going to get the kind of distance she wouldn't recover from. Starting tomorrow, I would begin replacing her piece by piece. And she wouldn't see it coming until it was already done. She still kissed me before leaving in the mornings, still made coffee for two, hers sweetened with almond milk, mine black and bitter, just the way I liked it. The performance was almost flawless. Almost. Because now, I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her shadow, watching everything with the cold detachment of a man who no longer loved, but calculated. She thought she was still in control. That was her first mistake. The second was thinking I'd ever confront her like a wounded animal. I wasn't wounded. I was watching, waiting, measuring every lie as it slid off her tongue. On Monday, I told her I was taking the kids to my mother's next weekend, just the three of us. She smiled and said she was glad I was getting time with them. Said she might use the weekend for deep rest. That's how she put it. Not sleep. Deep rest. Interesting choice of words for someone whose idea of self-care came with wine receipts and motel-grade perfume. That night, I logged into our joint bank account from my office, carefully scanning every transaction. I wasn't looking for big charges. That would be too obvious. I looked for patterns. And there it was. A consistent debit every Thursday night, disguised under a local florist's name. But this florist didn't exist, at least not in our city. I cross-referenced the name with online listings. Nothing. A shell business. A digital cover. I followed the digital trail to a payment processor that tied back to a short-term apartment rental service. Weekly rates. One-bedroom units. The kind of place you wouldn't bring your family, but you'd definitely bring a secret. I didn't ask her about it. I just bookmarked it. Then I reached out to an old colleague, James, who owed me a favor. He worked in logistics, quiet guy, used to be military. Trusted. I asked him to send a courier package to her office during one of her late nights. Just an empty envelope marked confidential with no return address. She never got it. Her receptionist said she wasn't in that day. Not out sick, not in a meeting, just not there. I thanked her politely, hung up, and checked the tracker app I'd quietly installed on her old tablet weeks ago, synced with her phone's location. It placed her in a residential neighborhood 20 minutes from her office. Not the same address as before. A new one. So now there were 2 locations. 2 hiding spots. She was rotating them. I noted the coordinates and said nothing. The next move was psychological. I started dropping trap questions, soft, subtle ones, meant to test her improvisation. How was work today? You look a little flushed. She blinked twice, stammered, said the air conditioning was broken. Funny. The weather app showed 60 degrees and cloudy all day. I asked, did you get my flowers? She froze for just a second before smiling too fast and saying, yes, they were beautiful. I hadn't sent any. Not a damn thing. I was testing her memory of lies she hadn't told, watching how she stitched answers from thin air. Then came the mutual friend trap. I texted one of her close friends, someone I knew she hadn't seen in a while, and asked if she was free for coffee soon. I made sure to mention how much my wife had enjoyed seeing her last weekend. Her reply was immediate. I haven't seen her in months. I thanked her, made small talk, ended the conversation with a polite smiley face. Checkmate on that front. But I still needed confirmation, undeniable, irreversible. So I turned to her car. Not to snoop, she kept it clean, but to plant. I slipped a small voice-activated recorder under the passenger seat. Just a cheap one from a tech shop downtown. No GPS, no Wi-Fi, just raw audio. I timed it for Thursday, the same night she usually came home late. She said she was going to a coworker's goodbye dinner. I kissed her on the cheek and told her to have fun. Her car pulled out of the driveway, and I waited. That night, when she got home, she was all smiles and half a bottle deep. Said the dinner was emotional. Said they all cried. I just nodded. The next morning, when she was in the shower, I retrieved the recorder. For hours of audio. Mostly road noise. But then, laughter. Low voices. Her voice. And a male voice, soft and intimate. At one point, she said, he's too nice. I feel guilty sometimes. He replied, forget him. He doesn't really see you. She laughed again and said, I don't think he even suspects. She was wrong. I saw everything. I knew everything. And now, I was building my war chest. Quietly, patiently. She still came home to the same man. Still cooked dinner beside me. Still slipped into bed like nothing had changed. But everything had. I had stopped being her husband the moment she decided her lies were more exciting than my loyalty. Now I was something else entirely. She didn't know it yet, but her entire life had become a stage, and I was the audience, the director, and the executioner, all waiting for the final act. It was her company's quarterly networking gala, the kind of event where people wear fake smiles, pass business cards like candy, and sip watered-down cocktails while pretending to care about each other's latest projects. She had begged me to come, said it would mean a lot, that people were starting to ask why I never showed up to support her. That was rich, but I agreed, smiled, put on the tailored navy suit she'd bought me 2 birthdays ago, and played the doting husband. I shook hands, made polite jokes, even complimented her coworkers, all while knowing that my phone, in my breast pocket, contained the single image that would end her entire world. It had taken weeks to set up. The voice recorder from her car had led me to a single name, Rob Bennett, a senior sales rep at a firm 2 floors above her office. Single, divorced, no kids. Too confident for a man that average. I tracked his social profiles, reverse-searched his phone number, even cross-referenced his calendar with hers. Every Thursday, they met at the same rental unit listed under a Shell LLC that Rob owned, one he used, amusingly, for consulting retreats. 2 days ago, I paid a favor forward. A buddy of mine in building security owed me a serious one. I got access to hallway footage from the rentals complex, specifically from last Thursday. 7:43 p.m., she entered the unit wearing the same green dress she told me was just for work. 9:18 p.m., they left together. His arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. Their faces too close for anything but sin. My friend exported the footage, and I clipped a single still. Her smiling up at him like she used to look at me. Tonight, I loaded that image onto a thumb drive and slipped it to the hotel AV guy before we arrived. Told him to flash it on the screen when I signaled. Told him it was part of a personal anniversary surprise. He laughed, said he loved romance. I smiled, said nothing. We entered the ballroom together. She looked radiant and red, her hand in mine like she hadn't been gripping another man the week before. We mingled. She introduced me to her new manager, who she had, at one point, considered sleeping with until Rob convinced her otherwise, according to one text thread she had deleted. But I had recovered. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was spiritual. Rot that started in the soul. An hour into the event, the mic was passed around to highlight top-performing teams. She stood on stage, confident, eyes bright, hands steady. That's when I gave the signal. The screen behind her flickered. The image popped up, her and Rob in low light, her lips close to his cheek, her fingers curled around his collar. At first, there was silence. Then the room buzzed like a kicked beehive. She turned around slowly, as if her brain couldn't quite process what her eyes were seeing. When she turned back to me, she wore a mask of calm. "What is this?" she asked, stepping down from the stage. "What's going on?" Denial, like clockwork. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I simply held out a small white envelope, placed it gently in her hand. Inside were screenshots, receipts, the location logs, and a printed copy of one particularly damning message. "He'll never find out. He's too comfortable to question me." Her fingers trembled. She opened it, skimmed, looked back up with a nervous smile. "This isn't what it looks like," she said. "It's taken out of context. Justification." I tilted my head, said nothing. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Okay, yes, we've talked. But it wasn't serious. I didn't mean for it to go that far." Minimization. I looked around. A few people were staring. A few more were pretending not to. The music had stopped. She leaned in. "You've been distant for months. You never even noticed me anymore. What did you expect?" Blame. I let her finish. Then I met her eyes and said calmly, "You told him I was too nice to suspect you. You mistook patience for weakness. You mistook comfort for blindness. You built this affair on the assumption I'd always be waiting for you to come home. You were wrong." Her face twisted. She scoffed. "You're pathetic. You actually set this whole thing up to humiliate me in public." Mocking confidence. The kind born from desperation. I leaned in, just enough that only she could hear me. "No. I set this up so you'd realize something important before you try to spin this into your next victim speech." She narrowed her eyes. "What?" I smiled, small, quiet, final. "You're not the one leaving me. I already left. This is just your delayed notification." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her face went pale, then red, then something in between. That was when I saw it, real fear. Not fear of me, but fear of the world she'd just lost. Of the stability, the status, the man who had built her up when no one else wanted to. She looked around the room like she could still fix this, still claw her way back. But I just stood there, unmoving. I hadn't walked away yet, but she knew I would. Everyone knew. The air around us was thick with judgment, whispers slicing through her like knives. She was alone, surrounded. And I wasn't even finished. She followed me out of the ballroom like a shadow unraveling at the seams, high heels clacking too fast, voice trembling as she hissed my name like a warning, a threat, a plea all at once. "You think you're so clever?" she snapped, grabbing my arm just past the double doors. "You think making a public spectacle makes you right?" I didn't answer. Just looked at her hand until she let go. "You always do this," she said, voice rising. "You shut down, you act like you're above it all, like you're some perfect little saint while I suffocate in silence." I turned my head slowly, met her eyes, and said nothing. That silence did more damage than any insult ever could. Her lips tightened. "You smothered me," she hissed. "With your routines and your damn moral superiority. Every day felt like I was living inside a spreadsheet." I gave her a small nod, calm and unreadable. "Then why didn't you leave?" She blinked. "What? If I was so unbearable, why did you stay? Until you had a replacement lined up?" That shut her up for 2 seconds, long enough for the panic to start peeking through the cracks. "It wasn't about him," she said quickly, shifting gears. "It was about me. I needed to grow, to find who I was." "And you found her in someone else's bed?" I asked. No venom. Just the question. Direct. Surgical. She flinched. "You don't understand what it's like to feel invisible." I tilted my head. "I do now." Her breath caught. She stepped closer, tried to lower her voice like we were still in some kind of partnership. "We can fix this," she said, suddenly gentle. "We've come so far. We have a life, a family. This doesn't have to be the end." I looked her in the eyes and said flatly, "It was over the day you decided I was too safe to matter." Her face twisted. "You're twisting everything. You always twist things to look like the hero. But you're not. You're boring." I interrupted. "Weak? Unmasculine." Her mouth opened, but I kept going. "It's okay. I read your texts. I know what you told him. How I was just a phase you were trying to grow out of." I let that sit for a moment. "Congratulations. You've outgrown loyalty, responsibility, and integrity. I hope the view's nice up there." She tried again to reach for my arm. I stepped back. She blinked rapidly, then lashed out. "You're heartless. You didn't even try to fight for me." I gave a small, cold smile. "You don't fight for what's already given away." Her breath hitched. "So what? This is it? You're just done." "I was done the moment you looked me in the eye and smiled with another man scent still on you." Her expression collapsed, rage mixing with humiliation in a cocktail of pure instability. "You're such a self-righteous prick," she spat. "You think being quiet makes you powerful? It makes you pathetic. You couldn't keep me interested for more than a few years, and now you want to act like you're some kind of martyr." I stepped forward, close enough for her to feel the absence of warmth in my voice. "No, I just don't scream when the corpse is already cold." She stared at me, eyes wide, unblinking. "You don't mean that," she said, but it was a question now. She was searching for something: remorse, anger, grief. Anything she could use to get a grip. But there was nothing left. "You don't even love me," she said, voice cracking. "You just love being right." I nodded once. "And you love being adored, even if you have to fake it in someone else's arms." She gasped like I'd hit her, but I hadn't touched her. "I never would again." "You can't just walk away from everything we built," she said, almost begging now. "From me. Watch me." That was when her mask finally shattered. She turned cruel. "She'll leave you too, you know. This perfect woman you think you'll replace me with. She'll get bored. She'll see through you. And then you'll be alone." I smiled again, just a little. "You assume I need someone to survive. But I'm not the one who hopped from bed to bed to avoid my own reflection." Her mouth opened, then shut. Her hands fell limp at her sides. For the first time all night, she looked small. Not just defeated, hollow. Like she finally understood what it meant to be left, not because someone wanted to hurt her, but because she had made herself impossible to stay with. The silence stretched between us, thick and irreversible. She tried to speak again, but no sound came out. Her eyes welled with something that looked like tears, but I didn't care enough to look closer. I turned slightly, not leaving yet, just enough to show her the final insult wasn't rage or revenge. It was indifference. That was what broke her. Not that I exposed her. Not that I won. But that I no longer cared enough to even hate her. The moment she spiraled into insults and desperation, I knew I had her exactly where I needed her, emotionally disarmed, too rattled to notice the noose tightening around her life. Revenge, for me, wasn't a tantrum. It was a blueprint, a timeline, a list of objectives and calculated moves. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I smiled, I nodded, and I let her believe she still had time to fix this. That was my first move, distraction. While she kept spinning in circles trying to manipulate my emotions, I began the cleanup and reset of everything we'd built together, with surgical precision. That very night, after she retreated to our bedroom in silence, I spent 3 hours at the kitchen table with my laptop and a locked drawer of documents. I backed up every photo, every message, every audio clip, every location ping, every receipt, every time-stamped moment of betrayal into a private cloud account with encrypted storage. A copy went to a hard drive I locked in a safety deposit box the next morning. Then I accessed our joint accounts. She'd gotten used to being the one in control of the finances, paying the bills, managing the cards. That illusion ended by sunrise. By noon, all the joint credit cards were canceled. Not frozen. Terminated. I left one personal card active for her, her name only, with a $250 limit, just enough to remind her of what she used to have. The rest of our assets were quietly split into separate accounts. I transferred my income, investments, and liquid savings into a solo account under a newly established trust in my name and our children's. She couldn't touch a dime without going through me. Then I moved to the vehicles. The SUV she drove, the one I bought, registered, and insured, was revoked. Not by confrontation. I simply reported the car as being reassigned to another household member. The insurance updated. The vehicle tracker was disabled. And by the time she walked out the next morning to head to work, the key fob didn't respond. A tow truck arrived an hour later and took it to a secured storage facility under my new trust. I texted her, "The car is no longer registered to you. Use your card to rent something. You'll need it." She didn't respond. I know she read it. She always reads things twice. After that came the utilities. She still lived under the illusion that we were on a break, not a collapse. I let her keep the house for another week while I filed. But I transferred every single account, electric, water, Wi-Fi, security system, into my name and adjusted the permissions. When she tried to log into the home Wi-Fi to send more whispered calls to her affair partner, she found the password changed. The thermostat set to an unchangeable 62. The lights on timers she couldn't override. The digital lock system pinged me every time she left the house and came back. She wasn't living in her home anymore. She was squatting in a controlled environment. Next, I called her parents. No drama, no emotion, just a quiet call, around 7:30 in the morning, when I knew her father would be up reading the paper. "I thought you both should hear this from me," I began, and then I told them the truth. Not the version laced with venom or self-pity, but the calm, undeniable facts. Her mother cried. Her father asked for proof. I sent the PDF while we were still on the line. After a long pause, her father said, "We had no idea." I said, "I know." And I meant it. They thanked me for calling. Said they'd handle their side. I knew what that meant. They'd cut her off. Not financially, she'd never needed their money. But emotionally, socially, she'd be persona non grata in the one place she thought would always accept her. That same day, I reached out to HR at her firm, not to get her fired, but to deliver what I had with clinical discretion. A friendly email with timestamps showing she had used company time, devices, and even their rental budget to meet with Rob. The kicker? Rob was on contract with her firm. She hadn't just cheated, she had breached ethical conduct. They replied with a terse, professional, "Thank you for your concern. We will review this internally." That was enough. The next step was legal. The divorce was filed quietly through my lawyer, grounds of infidelity, custody request for primary residence with supervised visitation, and asset protection clauses supported by documented betrayal. I attached the evidence packet. My lawyer smiled. Said, "She's going to fold the moment this hits her inbox." And I knew she would, because I had already removed every support beam she thought she had. Her car, gone. Her cards, stripped. Her access, revoked. Her family, informed. Her employer, alerted. Her partner in crime, ghosted her the moment he saw fallout coming. Rob blocked her on everything 2 days later, likely tipped off by someone in HR. When she finally confronted me, crying, frantic, standing in the driveway with her hands shaking and her phone held up like a white flag, I didn't say a word. I just looked at her the way you look at a stranger who's trespassing on private land. She asked, "Why are you doing this?" And for the first time in weeks, I answered her, "Because you never saw me as a man until I stopped protecting you." That broke her more than the silence ever could. She still thought I was playing chess. She didn't realize the game had ended days ago, and I had already walked away from the board. She didn't know what was coming. That was the beauty of it. She still thought she had room to negotiate, to explain, to maneuver her way back into control. So when I invited her to our son's birthday party at my mother's house, neutral ground, full of family, old friends, and just enough history to keep things civil, she came dressed like it was a second chance. Hair perfect, smile fake but polished, new dress probably bought on a card she didn't realize was now tied to her own empty bank account. She arrived late, of course, so the room was already full. Her parents were there, sitting with mine. Her sister, my cousins, our neighbors. Even her best friend from college, who had quietly reached out to me 2 weeks prior after noticing the sudden shift in her behavior online. She walked in like a woman returning to a throne she abandoned, head high, eyes scanning the room for signs of allegiance. And for a few seconds, she smiled, charming, composed, the manipulator's mask she'd worn her whole life. But no one smiled back. Not the way she expected. Her parents looked away. Her mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Her sister sipped wine like she needed it to swallow the bile rising in her throat. Even the children were distant. Our daughter clung to my leg, refusing to go near her. That was the first crack. Her smile twitched, faltered. "Hi, everyone," she said, too brightly. "So glad to be here." No one responded. Not even a nod. Just quiet stares and the clink of a fork on a plate in the background. Then my mother, calm and direct, stood up and handed her an envelope. You should read this before trying to make conversation. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside, a printout of the texts, the screenshots, the receipts, the GPS logs. Everything. Proof she could no longer spin. She blinked at the first page. By the third, her hands were trembling. By the fifth, she stopped pretending to read. "This is personal," she said, trying to laugh it off. "I don't think this is the time or place." Her father stood. "You made it the time and place the moment you brought shame into this family." Her voice cracked. "Dad, you don't understand." "I do," he said, not loudly, but with the kind of authority that made the room colder. "I understand exactly who you are now." She looked to her mother, who only turned away, face in her hands. Then to her best friend, who stared at her with a hollow kind of pity and said, "I believed you. I defended you. And you made me look like a fool." Her lover wasn't there, but he didn't need to be. She knew what happened. The silence after her exposure at work, the unanswered calls, the final text from him. "Lose my number." She had lost everything, and she still tried to salvage it. "You don't know what our marriage was like," she said, her voice rising, desperate. "He wasn't who you think he was. He was cold, controlling, obsessed with being the perfect husband. I felt like a guest in my own house. I didn't say a word. I didn't move. I stood at the far side of the room, watching, arms folded, eyes locked on hers. She saw me, and that, more than anything, broke her. Because I wasn't angry. I wasn't shouting. I was just done, and she knew it. She turned back to the room, arms open, like a preacher begging for a final sermon. "I made a mistake, okay? I was lost. I needed someone. I didn't plan to hurt anyone. You chose to," my mother said, over and over. She tried to laugh again, shaky and humorless. "Are you really all going to judge me for one mistake?" "One," her sister said. "You lied for over a year. That's not a mistake. That's a campaign." Her hands went to her face, as if hiding could undo what was already carved into stone. Her makeup smudged. Her breath hitched. She looked around for someone, anyone, to back her. No one moved. No one came. And I stayed right where I was, still silent, still watching. She looked back at me one last time, eyes wet, voice barely more than a whisper. "Say something." I did. For words. Calm. Final. "You did this alone." Her knees buckled slightly. She caught herself on the edge of the kitchen counter, gasping like she'd been hit. But I didn't move to help. I didn't offer a hand or a glance. I just stood there and let her drown in the silence she once weaponized. That's when the tears came, real ones this time. No audience left to perform for. Just the brutal, echoing realization that her world didn't fall apart. It was torn down, piece by piece, by the man she once underestimated. And the worst part wasn't that she was caught. It was that I didn't even hate her. I had simply erased her. It started with her voice cutting through the room like a blade, sharp, shrill, and desperate. "You think you're better than me? You think humiliating me in front of everyone makes you a man?" She shouted, and all eyes turned to us. The restaurant had been loud 5 minutes ago, birthday dinner for her father, family gathered, champagne flowing, but now it was dead silent, like the whole place was holding its breath. Her mother looked horrified. Her father sat frozen, his fork still halfway to his mouth. My sister stared with her mouth slightly open, and our son, God help me, clutched his napkin like it might keep the world from splitting apart. I didn't raise my voice. "I didn't have to humiliate you," I said calmly. "You did that on your own. I just stopped covering for it. Don't act like you're some innocent victim," she screamed, stepping closer, pointing a trembling finger at my chest. "You were cold. You were distant. You never made me feel alive." There it was. The excuse. The same rotten script they all reach for when they run out of lies. "No," I said, louder now, so the entire table could hear. "I made you feel safe. I made you feel trusted. I gave you stability, loyalty, a home, and you traded it all for a few nights of feeling wanted by a man who couldn't even bother to stand beside you now." People were watching from other tables now. Phones out. Whispers crawling across the room. Her best friend stood from her seat and tried to say something, but my wife cut her off. "You're all acting like I'm the villain," she yelled, voice cracking. "Like I'm the only one who's ever made a mistake." "Mistake?" I snapped, finally letting the edge into my tone. "Cheating isn't a mistake. It's not a stumble. It's not a misstep in a hallway. It's 1,000 decisions stacked on top of each other. Lying, sneaking, planning. And you made every single one. You didn't trip. You jumped." She was crying now, but not the kind that made anyone sympathetic. It was wild, feral, mascara-streaked rage. You're twisting everything. You always twist things to make yourself look like some saint. Her father stood up slowly, voice low but clear. We saw the evidence. We saw it all. Don't talk to him like he made this up. Stay out of this, Dad, she screamed, and the entire table recoiled. You don't get to lecture me about loyalty when you were never around for any of us growing up. Her father's eyes went cold. And yet I still never betrayed your mother. Gasps rippled across the room. Her mother was crying openly now, turning away. My wife spun on me, hair whipping across her face. You planned all this, didn't you? The messages, the files, the timing, you wanted this to happen. You enjoyed destroying me. No, I said, rising to my feet. I enjoyed finally letting the truth breathe after suffocating under your lies for a year. She shoved my shoulder. You think you're so righteous? So untouchable? You're just a coward who waited until I was broken before you struck. You broke yourself, I said, stepping closer, never raising my hand. You had everything, and you still wanted more. Not because you were unfulfilled. Not because I didn't love you. But because nothing will ever be enough for someone who doesn't love themselves. Her face collapsed like wet paper. You're nothing without me. No, I said. You're nothing without the mask. And everyone here just watched it fall off. She lunged like she wanted to slap me, but her best friend grabbed her wrist, held it midair. Stop, she whispered. Just stop. She yanked away and turned to Rob. Yes, he was there, trying to stay invisible behind a potted plant in the corner, pretending the ground might open up and swallow him. Say something. She barked at him. Tell them it wasn't meaningless. Rob stuttered. I didn't know this was private. I didn't mean what? I said, zeroing in. Didn't mean to sleep with a married woman? Didn't mean to help her lie to her kids, her family, her coworkers? Or didn't mean to disappear the second it stopped being fun? Rob stammered again, then turned and walked out the side door, leaving her in the wreckage. She looked around, breath heaving, eyes wild, and realized for the first time that she was alone. No backup. No defenders. Not even a scapegoat. Just a room full of people she'd disappointed. She dropped into her chair like the strings holding her upright had been cut. And I, still standing, turned to the others. I'm done pretending this didn't happen. Done cleaning up her messes. This is the last one. After this, she can clean up her own. I didn't wait for applause. I didn't need anyone to nod or speak or validate me. I looked at her one last time, broken, smeared, muttering apologies to no one, and I turned, slow and calm, and walked out of that restaurant with the entire room watching. The door didn't slam behind me. It clicked softly, like a chapter ending with precision, and for the first time in a year, I breathed like a man who'd finally left the fire behind. 3 months after it all came crashing down, she no longer existed in the world we once shared. The woman who used to walk into a room and command attention now moved like a ghost, head down, sunglasses always on, as if hiding behind the tinted lens could shield her from the judgment burning through every passing glance. She lost her job the week after the restaurant explosion, not officially for the affair, but for ethics violations and public misconduct that had spread like wildfire through the office. HR didn't even meet her in person. Just a cold email, a severance package that didn't even cover rent, and a warning to not list them as a reference. The coworkers who used to huddle around her cubicle, laughing and sipping overpriced coffee, stopped responding to her messages entirely. Even the ones she thought were friends. Her name became social poison. She tried going back to the gym where she used to flirt with strangers in yoga pants and call it self-care. But even there, eyes followed her. Whispers trailed behind her like a shadow she couldn't shake. The women she once gossiped with now avoided eye contact. One even turned and walked straight back out the door when she saw her walk in. She left town a few weeks later, moved to some rundown apartment 3 hours away in a city where no one knew her name. Started working as a receptionist at a third-tier real estate agency, far from the rising management position she once bragged about. No more evening galas. No more business-class flights. No more borrowed importance. Rob disappeared from her life the same week he walked out of that restaurant. Changed his number. Deleted his socials. Cut her off with the same ruthless efficiency she once used on me. She tried to call him once from a blocked number, he answered, said, "Lose this number," and hung up before she could speak. Her family didn't welcome her back. Her parents changed the locks. Her sister stopped answering texts. Even her college roommate, her supposed soul sister, blocked her after seeing the screenshots I'd made public. Every bridge she thought would hold her weight collapsed the moment she tried to cross it. And then, when the silence around her grew too loud, She came crawling back. It was a rainy Thursday evening when she showed up at my door. I saw her through the peephole, drenched, no umbrella, makeup smeared by tears and weather. She knocked once, then again, then whispered my name like it might still mean something. I opened the door. Not all the way. Just enough for her to see my face. Her breath caught like she'd seen a ghost. "Please," she said, voice hoarse. "I'm sorry. I was stupid. I didn't know what I was doing. You didn't deserve any of it." She wasn't wearing confidence anymore. She wasn't wearing anything at all except shame and soaked regret. "I miss you," she whispered. "I miss the way you made me feel safe. The way you looked at me like I mattered. I still love you." I never stopped. I stood there, unmoved. The kids were upstairs. My new partner, a woman of grace, fire, and unshakable loyalty, was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. There was warmth in my house again. Peace. Structure. And this woman at my door didn't belong in it. Not anymore. "Please," she said again, breaking, voice cracking like glass. "Just give me one chance to make it right." I looked at her like a stranger, because that's what she was now. A stranger wearing the face of someone I once loved, but hollowed out by her own choices. I said nothing for a long moment. Then I gave her what she came for. Not mercy. Not forgiveness. Just truth. "Strange," I said coldly. "I don't even remember your name anymore." And I closed the door before she could answer. She stayed there for a while. I could hear her sobbing through the wood. But I didn't open it again. That chapter was over. Not torn. Not scorched. Just closed, sealed, and left to rot in the quiet corners of the past. And that's the story, folks. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Now tell me, where are you from? And did you enjoy the fall?